And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, Simul Radio, and Simul TV. If you'd like to send me an email, xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. And for the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV, channel 21, simultv.com. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is science writer Brian Dunning. He is the author of 7 books on scientific skepticism. He is the writer and presenter of the documentary films Here Be Dragons. The website is herebedragonsmovie.com. And Principles of Curiosity. The website is principleofcuriosity.com. He has appeared on numerous radio shows and television documentaries, and also hosts the science video series In Fact with Brian Dunning. That website is infactvideo.com. A computer scientist by trade, Brian uses new media to showcase the rewards of science and critical thinking. He is a member of the National Association of Science Writers and lives in Central Oregon with his family, and his website is Skeptoid.com. And Brian, welcome to the X Zone.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
What was it that brought you to be the man behind Skeptoid? You're
So I can tell you the same story that you're probably going to hear from everyone who does science writing, and from many people who are actual working research scientists. And that's that when I was a kid, I loved weird stuff. My whole library was books about Bigfoot and UFOs and ghost stories and hauntings, all of that stuff. I just adored it and was obsessed with it. And I believed every word of it fully. And once I got older, went to college and studied computer science and started, writing for a living, I just began to learn bit by bit that it was solving these mysteries and finding out what's really going on, which was much more interesting than kind of just the popular version of these legends. And so when podcasting became a thing around 2006, all of a sudden, here was the perfect way to combine all of my interests into one. And I was fortunate that my show, Skeptoid, was popular from the beginning. Of course, it was easy in those days to be a big fish in a small pond. It'd be a lot harder to start a podcast these days. But I've been doing it ever since, and I just couldn't be happier.
Let me ask you this, Brian. You're a scientist. You're a science writer.
Yes.
Why do people get sucked into conspiracy theories?
So that's the $64 question, and there's a lot of research on this question. A lot of research. Basically, most of it started since the 1990s, but these days it's just a huge field. There's in fact journals devoted to conspiracy. Conspiracy ideation is kind of the common phrase for it. I'd say if you were to ask everyone who studies this, what is kind of the consensus on why people believe conspiracy theories, you're going to get a lot of different answers. But one kind of consensus theory or hypothesis, if you will, is that this sort of native paranoia that's at the root of conspiracy ideation is an evolved trait. And the basic example is the proto-human running across the savannah. You hear a rustling in the grass. Some of them were more paranoid and they jumped up a tree thinking it might be a saber-toothed cat. And others were more laissez-faire. They said, oh, that's probably nothing. And they walked along, and over time, enough of them did get eaten by saber-toothed cats that they became less representative in the population. And so this bit of native paranoia is a survival trait that kept us alive. And it's why animals are natively skittish. If you walk up to a wild animal, there's this native paranoia is a defense mechanism. But now here in the 21st century, we're all educated. We go to work, we go to school, we watch the news, we run around, we exist in the world and interact, and we learn how things actually work. And we learn that there's not necessarily a malevolent force behind every random event that happens. But we all have a different set of experiences through which we filter this native tendency. And so we're all at a different place somewhere along the spectrum
Right.
of tendency toward conspiratorial thinking.
But doesn't it click with the conspiracy theory believers that there is next to no, if any, what I would call evidence to support any of these conspiracy theories?
Well, yeah, but if you look and consider at what all of us believe, just in our daily life, how much of what we believe is based on evidence?
Well, as a
I mean, look
former
at all the different religions in the world that people believe passionately. That's most people's most important belief.
Now, I'm a former police detective. My evidence was very real. Evidence was part of my job. I sought evidence.
Sure.
So evidence to me was very real.
Sure. You had to follow more or less a version of the scientific method.
Exactly. Exactly. But when I look, now I've been doing this show nearly 30 years now. Thousands of guests. Everyone from an astronaut to physicist to Susie Little Homemaker who decided to become an online psychic. And whatever it is, there's next, when it comes to conspiracy theory, no evidence. The dots, when it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in order to make the conspiracy fit, they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. And this
Sure,
to me doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't make sense, but no beliefs make sense. That's why we call them beliefs and not facts or truths. They're not based on evidence. They're based on, how we feel, what's emotionally appealing to us, what strikes us as likely, what we were raised with in many cases, what our friends believe. That's where beliefs come from. They don't come from someone sitting down and rationally analyzing the facts.
So once again, why are conspiracy theories so popular? The shadow government, New World Order, the conspiracy that the government is hiding, the proof that the extraterrestrials are here and have been since 1947, the MJ-12 papers, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these are complicated subjects, and if you were to ask the average conspiracy theory person on the street, explain the geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe, they have no idea.
Right.
But they have a conspiracy theory. And because that's a really simple way of embracing and wrapping your arms around a large, complicated idea. If you look at one of the most influential conspiracy theory YouTube videos, was a movie called Zeitgeist from, I don't know, about 10 years ago or so. This was made by an art student who almost never left his apartment in New York City. And yet he claimed to have, uncovered the way virtually everything in the world actually works and to have made all of these great geopolitical discoveries that nobody else knew about. Well, obviously, you're not going to do that from being an art student inside your New York City studio apartment. So that's a great microcosm of how a smart person can come to believe a lot of weird things that aren't true. They're emotionally appealing. They work for us from a I'd say philosophical way, because it is a way that an epistemological, God, I can't say that word, perspective, that it's a way for us to know something that we otherwise wouldn't be able to know.
So is it part of a social clique that we're getting into? Is it a place where we feel we belong because there's nowhere else in society where we actually fit in?
Well, I mean, it can be a club like anything else. All of the JFK conspiracy theorists worldwide, no matter what their theory is, which can be radically divergent from one another, definitely mutually exclusive, they still consider themselves, sort of brothers in arms and on the same side of this debate, even though they're clearly not. If you look at their theories, it is very much a club. It's a way to belong to something.
All right,
but
Brian.
There's a lot of answers to this question.
All right, Brian, we've got to take our first break. Please stand by. Exonation Brian Dunning is our special guest this hour, and his website is Skeptoid.com, and we'll both be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue here in the X zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. By the way, I am, in case you're wondering what I'm wearing tonight, X Zone Nation, you can't see the rest of my shirt, but it's from the Hawaii Volcano National Park, not very far from where we have our home in Maui, Hawaii. This is the X Zone, and we'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And just a quick programming note, we'd like to welcome two new hosts to the X Zone Broadcast Network, Dan and Angela Clark. They're going to be doing a show once a week that is going to air on the X Zone Broadcast Network and Simul Radio 7 days a week. The name of the show is Heart to Heart with Dr. Dan and Sister Ann, and that show, let me see, it starts airing the first week in January 2019. Wow. Growing all the time. Listen, if you have an idea for a radio show or you're a radio show host and you'd like to see how you can get your show onto the X Zone Broadcast Network, where we have, we have, how many? There's about 130 million listeners. Just give us a call or send us an email. That would be the best part. Xzone at xzoneradiotv.com or admin, ADMIN, at rel-mar.com. Ryan Dunning is our special guest, and his website is skeptoid.com. You know, Brian, it's conspiracy theories are a dime a dozen these days, and I'll give you an example. Last night I had a guy on the show talking about the hollow earth, and he went into great detail telling me that the hollow earth is where the original Garden of Eden is, that the continent that is down there is 16,000 miles wide. It has its own sun, and he went into great detail, and then I asked him a very simple question. How do you know? Well, I read it in a book. Did you ever see any pictures? Well, no. So how do you know what you read in the book is true? And he basically said, well, if it's in a book, why isn't it true?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You know, so when you hear this kind of logic, and, you know, I've talked to people who believe that they have been followed by the men in black and that extraterrestrials teleport them to a spaceship that is 500 miles long, 300 miles high, that orbits Earth. And the conspiracy theories go on and on and on and on. And here we are in the year 2018 going into 2019 with the most sophisticated handheld cameras that are in our cell phones, and still the elusive proof of the conspiracies never happened. You see, I've got my own little conspiracy theory that the conspiracy is actually being perpetrated by the groups who are claiming that there is a conspiracy, because as long as the conspiracy that they're claiming to be real is in place, they don't have to provide any evidence.
That's always been the case, and always will be. Yeah.
So, are they like Monday afternoon quarterbacks? You know, they know everything about the game after it's been played.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't use the word "they" as if this is an us versus them situation. Because when you do what I do for a living, one of the things you have to start with is recognition of the fact that some of the things that I believe are wrong. And that's the case with all of us. Some of the things you believe are wrong. Everyone listening right now knows some fact that is wrong. And I think we can all agree that that's probably true.
Oh, I agree. So let me rephrase it. Instead of us versus them, how about those who have our 2 feet planted on the ground compared to the others who have their feet on some cloud on some planet that is orbiting another planet in a far distant galaxy?
Those people are out there, and people who have no strange beliefs and who believe everything that's true are out there as well. Yeah. But I think the vast majority of us are somewhere in the middle. And we're all on a journey to improve our knowledge. And sometimes we're going backwards, sometimes we're going the right way. But I think we all want to believe things that are true. We all want to be right about things. None of us want to be wrong. None of us want to be misled. but it's just the way the world works. It's not simple. It's not easy to do, and there's too many influences sending you in the wrong direction. So, again, I hate to say that there are people who are, we don't use the word nuts or anything like that,
I
because
do.
there's perfectly good sociology explaining all of these things. It doesn't require mental illness.
I like the psychiatry where it's called being nuts.
I didn't see that chapter in the DSM-5.
Well, I think I should write that chapter after doing the show for 30 years.
Look, believe me, I've heard it all as
Yeah.
well. I mean, people often ask me, what's the strangest urban legend or strange belief that you've heard? And my usual answer for that is, there's an alternative medicine treatment out of India where no matter what's wrong with you, they cut open your abdomen, insert the corpse of a dead crow, and sew you back up. And that's going to cure anything that's wrong with you. I mean, it goes on and on
Yeah.
and on, the things that people will believe.
Well, let me ask you, what are some of your favorite conspiracies?
So I answer that question because with the book having come out this year, that's one of the most popular questions I get. And I try to answer that question with what is my favorite, but why is it my favorite? And the one that I use is the moon landing, the belief that we didn't actually go to the moon and that NASA hoaxed it, or Stanley Kubrick filmed it, or all the various versions of that.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that one's my favorite is because while it's easy to go on the internet and find sort of the trivial answers to the specific claims made by the conspiracy theorists, such as, you can see the flag waving, but there's no wind on the moon, therefore it was in a studio. And you can see the skeptics answer, well, that's because the flag had wires in it, making it look like it was waving. Okay, fine. You can find that stuff, but there's a lot beyond that that people don't necessarily know, that we can connect the dots all the way to prove the entire story, from humans from Earth, got on a Saturn V, went to the moon, got out, walked around, picked up rocks, brought them back to Earth safely through the atmosphere. The entire story is proven connecting the dots with irrefutable facts that once anyone hears those facts, they go, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know that before. I'm interested and I'd like to learn more. And that's where I think the value of sort of debunking is in coming up with the how we know what we know that's really interesting and gets people excited about learning more.
Okay. One of the talking about the proof that within the conspiracy theorist land of Oz that is out there is that we didn't go to the moon because the Van Allen belt. And when you listen to the skeptics and verify what they say about the Van Allen belt and how it poses a danger to even present day astronauts, that they can't go in a higher orbit than such and such, you kind of say, well, geez, that makes sense too. I'm not saying that we didn't go to the moon, but, when you talk to the people who are hardcore proponents of the lunar missions and the lunar landings, they seem to forget about the Van Allen belts when they're telling you this story. So I think that a little bit of the problem is that even though the experts who believe and bring the perfect case that it did happen, when the skeptics or the conspiracy theorist come up with a little bit of information that is neglected or forgotten by the experts, this just kind of opens up a can of worms.
Well, it would. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's a great example, because that's certainly one of the cases I'm talking about where it's very easy to go online and find the explanation of how and why that worked.
Sure.
The Van Allen belts are not the same thickness. We went through a very narrow part of it. We went through it as quickly as we can, and you have to stay in it for a significant amount of time before it becomes dangerous. Now, the astronauts did all receive a high dose of radiation. I forget how many chest X-ray equivalents, but it was a risk that was well known, that was well understood. We did know how much radiation they'd be exposed to,
Right.
and everyone who went was still willing to do that. So, I mean, it's not danger-free. Going to the moon, nobody ever argued that it's free of dangers. Of course there are some. There's known dangers, and there's unknown dangers. That was one of the known dangers, but it was a manageable risk.
So why do you think some conspiracy theories live longer than others? For example, the JFK assassination, the conspiracy theory that 9/11 was a black op. The JFK, my God, it's past 50 years, and people are still talking about how this was all part of a government conspiracy. The conspiracy with 9/11, why do they live on? Like,
yeah, in fact,
if we're
JFK more than any other, because it's now, I believe it's about 2/3 of Americans believe that the Warren Commission report was not true. That's not only one of the most long-lived, but it's one of the most widely believed. There was a great piece of research that was published 5-6 years ago, I'm going to guess. The author's name I would give if I remembered it off the top of my head, but he'd come up with an equation to judge the likelihood of any given conspiracy theory. And the variables you plugged into this equation were things like how long ago did it happen, how many witnesses were there, how many people would have to be silenced to avoid breaking the news. And it was based on a whole series of actual conspiracies through history. How long did it take before they were discovered by law enforcement, the media, whoever?
All right, we've got to hold it here. This is a bit of a cliffhanger. I've got to take my news break at the bottom of the hour. X Zone Nation, our guest this hour is Brian Dunning. His website is Skeptoid.com, and Brian and I will return after this news break as we continue from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. A couple of programming notes for the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. 3 new shows coming to the airwaves in January: Witness to the Paranormal, Paranormal Court TV, and Investigations 365. And they'll all be on the X Zone TV channel starting in January. And that is channel number 21 at simultv.com. Our guest is Brian Dunning, Skeptoid.com. All right, before we went to the break, we were talking about this formula that somebody came up with when it came to conspiracies, and I'm sorry that I had to cut you off, but I do have my hard breaks. So if you can continue, I'd appreciate it.
Actually, it's perfect that you cut me off because I was able to look it up. So I've got the study in front of me. This is from 2016, published by Grimes. The title is David Grimes on the Viability of Conspiratorial Beliefs, and it was in PLOS One. And so the equation was created by looking at historical conspiracy theories and how long it took before they unraveled, based on the number of people who had to be silenced and a number of other factors. And so I've got right here, let me pull it up here. Here's the table of, okay, so for the moon landing hoax, which we were just talking about, the expected failure time would be 3.68 years. So if we didn't actually go to the moon, it would have been about 3.5 years before it became revealed. And really the largest driver of that is the enormous number of people involved. I guess peak NASA employment it has listed as 411,000 people in 1965. We've got a similar number for climate change fraud. If climate change was in fact a fraud, that would unravel in 3.7 years. And of course, it's lasted a lot longer than that. And that's based on the number of scientists all around the world who've worked on it in some fashion. And it gives numbers like this for a whole list of conspiracy theories. So it's fascinating research. It's more kind of a fun gimmick. But I mean, it is based on actual conspiracies and actual data that do fit this model that was put together. So it's interesting.
What are some of the other weird conspiracy theories? I mean, besides going to India and getting a rat put in you to cure all.
Well, yeah, and that's so the weirdest one, of course, has got to be David Icke and his
reptilians.
His whole narrative that world leaders are actually reptilian aliens wearing electronic disguises.
but he was off his meds at that time. Let me tell you a story about David Icke quickly.
Yeah.
I was doing the show from CKTB in St. Catharines before we went on our own and did everything in house. And I announced the week before that David Icke was going to be a guest, and I got a call from the Niagara Regional Police saying, "Is David Icke coming on your show?" I said, "Well, yes, he's coming on the show, but he's not going to be in studio." And they said, "All right." I said, "Is there a problem?" He said, "Well, no, it's not, as long as he's not coming in, because if he's not going to be there, we can't do anything about it." And I figured, well, that's a kind of a strange comment. So I called up the police station to make sure that this was an actual call, and it was. During the time when David Icke was on the phone with me, there were two unmarked cars, one in the front of the station and one in the back of the station, because they thought, well, maybe David Icke was going to be actually coming down. And when you live this firsthand, you can actually see the danger that these conspiracy theorists are actually putting on society. Like, I'm a Canadian. I love our Queen. I'm a good old monarchist from way back when. And to think that people actually believe this guy. It's like, are you out of your tree, for God's sake? And when it comes to proof, well, what proof do they offer?
Old VHS tapes showing a glitch when you pause the tape.
Yeah.
To my mind, that's the only evidence I've ever seen, and it's fairly low quality evidence.
Exactly. And about Roswell, New Mexico, the alleged crash going back to 1947. Man, I have heard that story so many times. I think that when I see the bright light come the day where it's my turn to go, I'm going to say, is this Roswell, New Mexico? Because, like, so many of the stories are all the same, except they forget one major important fact that shoots the Roswell story down in no time flat. And that is the fact that Jesse Marcel, the base intelligence officer, goes to an alleged crash site that he doesn't know what it is at this time, picks up all this material, puts it in a Jeep, and instead of going right back to the base to maintain the chain of custody and the chain of evidence, what does he do? Well, he drives home, wakes up his wife and kids, and lets them play with the material. Right then and there, that story is dead.
And it remained dead. I mean, that's the thing that a lot of people don't know about that, is that was a non-story until the 1970s.
Good old Stanton Friedman.
Yeah, until Stanton Friedman basically created the mythology. And that's the case with so many things that become popular, like the Bermuda Triangle, exact same thing. It's an imaginative author who literally creates it out of whole cloth.
Good old Charles
Stanton Friedman didn't create it out of whole cloth, but he certainly guided it, putting together all of these puzzle pieces.
And he did a great job. It served him very well as a group of other people who keep the conspiracy alive.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what role has the internet played, and what role is the internet playing when it comes to the longevity of these conspiracy theories?
I was just having a Twitter debate with somebody about that exact question before we got on. I am of the opinion, and I do believe it's a minority opinion in my field, I'm of the opinion that the internet is not making things worse. And the reason I say that is the typical claim is that, well, the internet makes it a lot easier for people to spread, YouTube videos full of crap and all of this nonsense. However, the internet also makes good information spread more easily. So I believe the rising tide raises all boats equally. I don't think that it necessarily puts the side of science and reason at any more of a disadvantage than they've already always been at.
See, my way of looking at the internet is that it's the largest septic tank that mankind has ever created, because there's more crap in it than there is anything else.
That's true.
Because anybody with $12 can get themselves a website, if they know how to design it themselves, a domain name, and then create this facade, this illusion on how the rest of the world perceives them. And there's no one to monitor, there's no one to vet, there's no one to make sure that these people are who they say they are. And that is, to me, is a danger.
Yeah, but 100 years ago, 200 years ago, they'd have been writing pulp books that were full of just as much misinformation
But
and
back,
would have had relatively just as much of an impact on the population.
not really,
Now, like I
because
say,
because
it's a
there's,
minority opinion. I think most people disagree with me,
yeah.
but that's my take on that question.
You know, because let's face it, during those times where the books were pulp fiction, they didn't have the ability to instantaneously rip people off for hundreds of dollars.
Well, that's true, but I mean, snake oil, look at the name of snake oil products. It came from the name of an actual snake oil product. There have always been people, you know, whether it was P.T. Barnum or one of his predecessors out there looking to rip people off.
Yeah.
I think people are people. I think people always have been people. And I think that in every group of people, you've got all kinds of people. This is just something that I see. I mean, obviously you have about twice as much experience doing the radio show as I've got doing my podcast.
Right.
But, you know, I am studying one of these urban legends or one of these old stories exhaustively for 1 week to put together each show. Today, I was reading some journal articles from 1876, scientific journal articles, and they were as full of all kinds of garbage sensationalism that you would never see in a journal article today. It's surprising that you can't really look at the internet today and say, oh, that's so much worse than what media was 50 years ago, 100 years ago.
I disagree
200 years
with
ago.
you. I disagree with you. Being a member of the established media, I disagree with you. We didn't have fake news going back even 20 years ago. Everything was vetted. Everything was investigated. Now, because of the internet and what the internet is doing to the news media industry, if it don't bleed, it don't lead. And if it don't bleed, that means you're not going to get as many advertisers and listeners because one feeds the other. It's all a matter of money.
Absolutely.
You know, and this is what the internet has done. It's turned it into, if you'll excuse the expression, a whore's market out there. Because there is no credibility.
I think the whore's market has changed. I don't think it's been created or grown. I mean, look, I read, for what I do for a living, I am always reading some old book.
Yeah.
And maybe it's only from the 1970s or maybe it's from the 1870s.
Right.
But I am constantly surprised at the low quality of news reporting. I mean, the further back you go, the worse and worse
All right,
it
listen,
gets
we've got to
until
take our final break here. Please stand by. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Brian Dunning, and his website is Skeptoid.com. And we'll be back as we wrap up this hour here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Brian Dunning. His website is Skeptoid.com. Brian, besides the conspiracy theory of the lunar landing, what other conspiracy theories have been proven to be true?
So that's the most common question. And in fact, in the early days of talking about the book with the publisher, you know, they wanted 50 conspiracy theories, and they said they thought that was a huge number, and they said, gee, do you think you'll be able to come up with 50? And I said, well, let me just see. And I did an export out of the database of podcast episodes that were in the conspiracy theory category and had over 200. So we had to whittle it down. And that's one of the first questions they asked me. And I said, we've got to have a section in the book specifically about conspiracy theories that have been proven true. And so looking in the table of contents here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 chapters in the book. I'm going to give you one of them. And if you want to hear the others, you got to read the book. So the one I'm going to give you is numbers stations. Now, you're in radio, you must know about numbers stations.
Yeah.
But the basic plot is that particularly during the Cold War, and still today, although to a much lesser degree today, if you took a shortwave radio, which is a type of radio that can broadcast and receive pretty much all around the world in ideal conditions. If you took a shortwave radio and you tuned it to a certain station at a certain time of day, you would hear a predictable program that was going to come on. It might start with some little tune, some little bit of music, and then there would be an automated voice reading off strings of numbers, 5 at a time. It would repeat each string once, and it would go on the next string of 5 numbers. And it might do this for several minutes. It might do this for several hours. So the conspiracy theory, sort of the tinfoil hat version, was, oh, this is government sending instructions to spies. While the more level-headed people, those of us like myself, who tend too much towards cynicism in our zealousness to be more scientific and grounded, we said, no, it's going to be something prosaic. It's going to be something like, maybe it's oceanographic research buoys transmitting their data or something like that. Then what happened a few days after 9/11, which nobody noticed because the newspapers were full of other news right after 9/11, is a senior Pentagon official was arrested inside the Pentagon at the State Department for espionage. And she was arrested for listening to a numbers station that was being broadcast out of Cuba, typing the numbers into her laptop computer that had a decryption program, and it was giving her instructions to perform espionage for Cuba. She was part of a spy ring called the WASP network, and a number of other people were later arrested from the WASP network. And since then, there's been quite a few arrests throughout Europe from various espionage agencies listening to different number stations being broadcast from different places in the world. And so it turned out that the conspiracy theorists, the tinfoil hat version, was exactly right in this case. And I love that case.
So how do people who are getting involved because of the excitement, the adrenaline rush that conspiracy theories bring them, that puts them into their own little social network of people who are like them, that don't fit in anywhere else in society, how do they differentiate between what is real and what isn't?
Well, I think the same way that you and I do. Like I said, you and I are wrong about some of the things we believe. We don't know what those are because from where we're sitting, we can't see them. Mm-hmm. I often say you can't see your own eyeball. We don't know which of our beliefs are wrong. They don't know which of their beliefs are wrong. It's a human behavior. It's not a conspiracy theorist behavior.
So what is a conspiracy theorist behavior then?
So, I mean, we have the term, obviously, and the term describes definition of a conspiracy theory. That's another big question that there's all kinds of different answers for. It's somebody who believes, whose pattern matching is in overdrive, and they believe that there is a malevolent, purposeful force behind some everyday event or news story or something. I mean, that's basically what it is. And that's pretty vague, but it's necessarily vague because conspiracy theories are all over the map.
So what pushes a person into that direction?
Well, so you've got your native paranoia. You've got, okay, here's an interesting way to answer that.
Okay.
There's a lot of surveys, particularly in the last 10 years, a lot of surveys have been done trying to assess people's tendency toward conspiracy theories and trying to match these up to demographics. And you'll often hear, like, conservatives will also say, oh, liberals are all conservative conspiracy theorists. Mm-hmm. Like, Bernie Bro and the Koch brothers are behind all the evil in the world. And then liberals will always say, oh, it's the conservatives that are all the conspiracy theorists with, George Soros is behind everything. And what it turns out to be the case is that there is no match at all between a political belief and your tendency toward conspiratorial thinking. It's equal across genders, across age groups, across socioeconomic statuses, which is very surprising. It's something that generally affects the whole population. Anyone can be more of a conspiracy theorist than anyone else. It's only when you come down to a particular conspiracy theory, it's where you can say, oh, people who are rich tend to believe this, or people who are conservative tend to believe this. And that's the case with most of the obvious ones. We can pretty easily assign most obvious conspiracy theories to, a particular political group that it might appeal to.
In your opinion, what is, I mean, besides the JFK assassination and the 9/11 conspiracy theories, in your opinion, what is the most popular conspiracy theory? And of course, we're not even going to include the lunar landing on that.
It's big pharma, big food. The food companies all conspire to make us obese.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical companies all hide the pure, wonderful, natural cure for cancer. They make money by keeping us sick. Those are very prominently featured in my book, and they're very commonly believed.
Why would somebody believe that? Like I know many people who are in the medical research field, and these people bust their butts off night and day working on cures or trying to get people to walk again after spinal injuries and so on.
Yeah.
And to actually hear people think that just because they're getting fat, because they're lazy, because they're eating the wrong foods, it's a conspiracy. This is where I think a lot of people should get back on their meds, whether they believe in the conspiracy theory that Big Pharma is out to get them. Like, there seems to be a lack of common sense in the world today.
Yeah, certainly. The basic answer is that magically easy solutions to complicated problems are attractive, and everybody wants them. If you can tell people that there is a pill to cure all of your diseases, or a superfood that you can eat that will magically make you skinny, but the reason you don't have it is that the machinations of the society and industry are all conspiring to suppress it from you. That's something that's deeply compelling and attractive, and we all want it to be true. And so we all seek out information that confirms that. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Why, in your opinion, is the UFO conspiracy cover-up so popular?
I'm not sure that it is. I do see there's a lot of attention being paid to it. But what I see is that it's something that is more considered to be fringy, I think, by the mainstream than some of the other ones we've just talked about that are much more popular. That's my impression, anyway.
Yeah, well, it would seem that there are different classes or social structures that seem to lean towards one conspiracy more than the other.
Definitely, yeah, that's absolutely true. And we had this news about a year and a half ago with the Pentagon's UFO program.
All right.
They released this footage taken from a fighter plane, and they're saying this is a UFO. And of course, every pilot in the world looked at this footage and just did this incredible facepalm and saying, "Are you kidding me? Did they not ask anyone who knows what they're looking at when you look through an infrared screen?" But the people on the street don't know that, and the video does look weird if you don't know what you're looking at. And so, it's something that's an easy sell, especially when you've got something like video to persuade people with, and you've got a credulous news media that is after the sensational story, and they're happy to promote it.
I don't know if the New York Times is credulous any longer.
Every newspaper consists of people. And you got all kinds of people working at every newspaper.
Yeah, and something else with all these newspapers. They all have to make money from the advertising, and advertising is only attained through readership. The more readers you have, the more money you can make on your advertising. Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to get more information on our guest, all you need to do is go to his website at Skeptoid.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away and watch out. Not everything in life is a conspiracy. If you want the real answers, just look at the person on the other side of the mirror. We'll be back. Don't go away.